A man covered in white. Flaking scales falls face first into the dry dust of a Galilean road. You start to see something that the random acts of kindness reading completely misses. The sequence is not accidental. They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." The sudden calm is not a comfort. It is a terror. Because a prophet who can heal a fever is a man you can understand. But a man who speaks to the abyss and watches it immediately flatten into a mirror is something else entirely. The boundaries of the invasion have expanded beyond human comprehension. The disciples are staring at the architect of the ocean, standing in a fishing boat, dripping wet. He has conquered the elements. He has conquered the spirits. He has conquered the abyss. But the next transfer of power will not come from his voice. It will be stolen from his coat. If you are in a season where you have spent everything you have, tried every possible solution, and only watched your situation grow worse, you already understand the gravity of the next phase. You know what it is to be hollowed out by a hidden, chronic pain. If you have ever felt entirely invisible, completely out of options, and disqualified from the presence of God, you are standing in the exact shoes of the woman in Luke chapter 8. She has been bleeding for 12 years. Under Levitical law, this makes her perpetually unclean. Anything she sits on becomes unclean. Anyone she touches becomes contaminated. The real question of these 37 events isn't just how he did them. It's this: why did he do them in this exact order? She has exhausted her bank account on physicians who only made the pain worse. She is a ghost walking through her own life, and she decides to break the law. Jesus is moving through a dense, suffocating crowd. You can feel the physical pressure of the mob's shoulders, shoving against shoulders, the stifling midday heat, the heavy dust kicking up into the back of your throat. She does not ask for an audience. She does not want to be seen. She drops low, reaches through the chaotic tangle of legs and sandals, and grazes the rough, woven fringe of his coat. Instantly, the bleeding stops, but the procession violently halts. Jesus turns around in the crushing crowd and asks, "Who touched me?" Peter thinks he has lost his mind. The crowd is a physical vice, pressing from every direction. Everyone is touching him. But Jesus says something deeply revealing. Luke 8:46, "Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me." The word translated as power here is the Greek noun dunamis. It is the root of our modern word for dynamite. It does not mean a passive, resting energy. Dunamis is a kinetic, explosive, inherent ability to achieve an impossible result. It appears over 100 times in the New Testament, and it almost always describes a force that alters reality. And the answer changes how you read every single page of the Gospels. We have a tendency to treat the miracles of Jesus like a magician's highlight reel. When she touched his coat, he did not consciously pause to weigh whether she was worthy of a miracle. The healing was not a transaction he had to formally approve. It was the automatic, explosive overflow of his nature, colliding with desperate faith. The invasion has now reached the absolute margins of society. He calls her daughter, restoring not just her physical body, but her social standing, her dignity, and her identity in front of the very people who had shunned her. He is proving that his authority does not require a formal ceremony or a pristine synagogue setting. It bleeds out into the dust of the street. But the scope of the invasion is about to expand again. He has conquered the elements of the deep and the incurable diseases of the body. But what happens when the operation moves completely out of civilization? What happens when the problem is not a sickness, but a barren, desolate wasteland, and thousands of hungry people who cannot feed themselves? The sun bakes the dry grass on the side of a desolate hill. 5,000 men sit in the dirt. Add the women, add the children. It is a sprawling, exhausted sea of human need. The light is fading. The wind is picking up off the water. We read them to be amazed. But Jesus was not performing tricks to gather a crowd. He was not just putting band-aids on a broken world. They are miles from the nearest village, and their stomachs are completely empty. The disciples panic. They look at the sinking sun. They look at the massive crowd. They bring Jesus, the math. Send them away. Jesus looks at the crowd. You give them something to eat. They find a boy. They bring the only rations available in the entire crowd. 5 loaves of cheap, rough barley bread. 2 small, dried fish. It is a peasant's lunch. It smells like salt and baked dust. It is completely, laughably inadequate for the sheer scale of the problem. Jesus takes the bread. He looks up to heaven. He blesses it. He breaks it. He hands a piece to a disciple. He breaks it again. He hands it to another. The fabric of reality stretches. Matter replicates in his hands. He breaks it again, and again, and again. The bread does not run out. The baskets fill. The disciples walk through the crowd, handing out torn pieces of barley and fish. They come back. The baskets fill again. Thousands of people eat. They chew the bread. They swallow the fish. They wipe the crumbs from their mouths. They eat until their bodies are physically heavy with food. And when the meal is over, 12 large woven baskets of broken pieces sit on the grass. This is not a multiplication trick. It is a new Genesis. He was diagnosing a disease that had infected the very fabric of creation, and he was dismantling it, piece by piece. In the ancient Jewish mind, the wilderness is the realm of death. It is the place of the curse, where thorns grow and nothing thrives. When Israel wandered in the desert for 40 years, they survived only because bread fell from the sky. Moses was the shepherd who led them to the manna, but Moses only asked God for the bread. Jesus is breaking the bread with his own hands. He is proving that the invasion has jurisdiction even in the barren places. He does not need a fertile valley to sustain life. He does not need human supply chains to provide. The architect of Eden can make a feast in the dust. The curse of the ground, spoken in Genesis chapter 3, is bending backward in his presence. Where there should be starvation, there is sudden, overwhelming abundance. He has conquered the elements. He has conquered the spirits. He has conquered disease. He has conquered the barren earth. But feeding the stomach is one thing. The sequence is accelerating toward the ultimate darkness. And the next phase of the invasion requires him to step into a world where the light has been entirely shut out since birth. Throughout the entire sweep of the Hebrew scriptures, a prophet will occasionally perform the impossible. Moses splits a sea with a wooden staff, in a very specific, escalating sequence. If you miss the architecture of what he was doing then, Elisha tells a Syrian general to wash in a muddy river to cure his leprosy. Elijah stands in an upper room and watches. A dead boy's lungs suddenly fill with air. But there is one specific miracle that you will never find anywhere in the pages of the Old Testament. No human being ever opens the eyes of the blind. In the ancient Jewish theological mind, that specific act of restoration was universally understood to be the exclusive fingerprint of Yahweh. The prophet Isaiah stated clearly that when God himself finally arrived to save his people, the undeniable proof would be that the eyes of the blind shall be opened. Psalm 146 explicitly declares that the Lord opens the eyes of the blind. It was not a parlor trick. It was a messianic copyright. So, when Jesus encounters the man born blind in John chapter 9, the stakes of the timeline have escalated drastically. He is not just solving a medical defect to make a beggar's life easier. He is making a terrifyingly specific claim about his identity, right in front of the religious elite. And the method he uses is completely bizarre unless you understand the ancient text. He does not just speak a word. He kneels in the dust of the road. He spits directly into the dry earth. You will completely miss what he is trying to do in the chaos of your own life right now. These 37 moments are not random acts of pity. He mixes the dirt and the saliva with his fingers, making a thick, wet clay. And then he smears that rough mud directly onto the man's unseeing eyes. The mud is not a primitive medical ointment. It is a second act of creation. Jesus is deliberately echoing the ancient imagery of Genesis chapter 2, where the architect of the universe reaches into the dirt of the earth to form the first human being. For a man born without functioning eyes, Jesus doesn't just heal the broken tissue. He acts as the original manufacturer, using the raw materials of the earth to build what was missing from the womb. He tells the man to go wash in the pool of Siloam. The man feels his way through the winding, noisy streets of Jerusalem, the heavy clay drying tight against his skin. He steps down into the cool water. He washes his face, and for the first time in his existence, light floods his optic nerve. He sees the glare of the sun on the water. He sees the colors of the stone walls. He sees the faces of the Pharisees who are about to interrogate him. The sequence has escalated again. Jesus is not just pushing back the chaos of the fall or proving his authority over the deep. They are a systematic invasion. He is reclaiming territory, first over the physical elements, then over the spiritual realm. He is reclaiming the divine prerogative. He is openly doing what only the Creator is permitted to do. And the religious leaders understand the implications so clearly that they immediately pick up stones to kill him. But repairing a living body is still only a skirmish, on the edge of the real battlefield. The invasion is marching inevitably toward the capital city of human despair. He has proven his authority over the elements, the demons, the diseases, and the darkness. But there is one enemy left standing, and to conquer it, Jesus has to let a man he deeply loves die. The sun beats down on a limestone cave in Bethany. A massive, heavy stone seals the entrance. The air around the rock smells faintly of decay. Inside, a body is wrapped tight in linen strips, lying on a cold slab in absolute darkness. Outside, Jesus is weeping, but he is also angry. A deep, guttural shudder tears through his chest. The messenger came days ago. Jesus knew Lazarus was sick. He had healed a nobleman's son from 20 miles away with a single spoken sentence. He could have stopped this from a distance, but he stayed where he was. He let his friend die. He let the sisters grieve. He let the body go cold. He let the blood settle in the veins. He let the skin begin to decompose. 4 days. Then over human brokenness. And finally, over death itself. There is a trajectory, a rising tension, a deliberate marching order. In ancient Jewish tradition, the soul was believed to hover near the body for 3 days, hoping to return. But on the 4th day, the face changed. On the 4th day, the rot set in. On the 4th day, the soul departed permanently. 4 days meant the situation was irreversible. It meant death had fully, legally swallowed its prey. His absence was not a tragic accident. It was a calculated strike. Jesus walks to the tomb. He tells the men to roll the stone away. Martha violently objects. The smell will be unbearable. The physical reality of human decomposition is sitting right behind that rock. But Jesus does not blink. The men push. The limestone grinds against the dirt. The tomb is open. The pitch-black throat of the cave stares back at the crowd. The stench hits the hot afternoon air. Jesus does not go inside. He does not perform CPR. He does not touch the body. He simply fills his lungs with air and shouts into the dark, "Lazarus, come out." The crowd stops breathing. The silence stretches. Then, a rustling in the blackness. The sound of fabric dragging on stone. A silhouette appears in the mouth of the cave. A man shuffles into the blinding Judean sunlight. His hands and feet bound tightly in grave clothes. A sweat cloth wrapped around his face that builds to a climax no one in the 1st century saw coming. To see the pattern, you cannot just look at the famous ones. His chest is rising and falling. His lungs are pulling in the dry air. The warm blood is violently pumping through his restored veins. The rot is gone. The death is reversed. This is the final Semeion. The sequence has reached its terrifying peak. He has conquered the molecular structure of water. He has evicted the demonic spirits. He has rewritten paralyzed limbs and bleeding tissue. He has multiplied matter in a wasteland. He has formed new eyes from the dirt. And now, he has walked right up to the heavy, locked gates of human death, kicked them off their hinges, and dragged his friend back alive. The invasion is complete. He has proven absolute jurisdiction over every single enemy that plagues the human condition. But what happens when you realize these 37 victories were not the end of the war? What happens when you realize every single one of them was just a shadow, pointing forward to one final cosmic collision? Water in a stone jar turned crimson, and the old system of purification gave way to the new wine. A man with rotting scales fell in the dirt, and the untouchable felt the heat of clean skin. A demon shrieked in a quiet synagogue, and the trespasser was violently evicted from the property. A storm that was tearing the planks of a wooden boat apart simply drops out of the sky, leaving the water like glass. You have to watch the progression. You have to start exactly where he started. Not with a leper, not with a paralyzed man. A storm threatened to swallow a fishing boat, and the ancient abyss was flattened into glass. A bleeding woman reached through a suffocating crowd, and explosive power healed a 12-year wound. A hungry crowd sat in a barren wasteland, and the hands that built Eden multiplied bread in the dust. A dead man lay rotting behind a heavy stone, and the grave was forced to give up its dead. 37 signs. One deliberate invasion. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the dirt, not the blinding display of power over the wind, or the sudden abundance of bread on a hillside. It is the architect of the universe, kneeling in the dust of a road in Jerusalem, mixing spit and clay with his own fingers, building what was missing from the womb for a man who had never seen the sun. It is the willingness of a holy God to get his hands dirty with our brokenness. If you are in a season where your life feels like that pitch-black cave in Bethany, where the stone is sealed and the situation feels completely irreversible, not even with a demon-possessed outcast wandering the tombs. To understand the invasion, you have to go to a wedding party in a small village. This sequence is a map. Jesus does not always stop the suffering from a distance. Sometimes he lets the clock run out. Sometimes he lets the stone roll shut. But he has never surrendered the territory. He is not standing far off, pitying you from a clean, safe distance. He is moving toward the rot. He is stepping into the abyss, and his voice still has absolute jurisdiction over the dark. If this opened something for you, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who needs to know their wilderness is not the end of the story. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. And may the God who touched the untouchable silence the wind and walked out of his own tomb. Step into the chaos of your storm and speak peace to the water, where the wine has just run out, and a family is minutes away from total public ruin. The stone jars are heavy, scraped, and completely empty. 6 massive purification vessels sitting dry in the shadow of a courtyard in Cana. You can hear the panicked, hushed arguing of the servants in the back corridors as the guests continue to drink. The wine is gone. In first-century Jewish culture, this is not a catering error. It is a social catastrophe. It is a breach of hospitality that would bring lifelong, irreversible shame to the groom's family. This is where the invasion begins. Not with fire falling from heaven, on a Roman legion, not with the parting of a sea, but with the quiet prevention of a family's social disgrace in a farming village. Jesus tells the servants to fill the 6 stone jars with water, draw some out, and take it to the master of the feast. It becomes 120 gallons of the finest vintage anyone at the party has ever tasted. A stone rolls back, and a dead man with dried blood in his hair walks out of the pitch black of a sealed cave. But the detail that unlocks the entire chronological sequence of his miracles is how the writer, John, describes what just happened. John chapter 2, verse 11. John doesn't call this a miracle. In fact, John almost never uses the common Greek word for miracle, teros, which means a wonder or an omen. The word John uses here, and throughout his entire gospel, is the Greek semeion. The word semeion means a sign, a mark, a token of indication. A miracle, in the ancient mind, is an endpoint. It is a spectacle designed to prove that a God is powerful, meant to be stared at in awe. But a semeion is a street sign. You don't stare at a street sign. You look at what the sign is pointing to. This is the key to the entire timeline. The water turning to wine is not a parlor trick. It is a signpost. Jesus is not performing magic to impress a wedding party. He is leaving a fingerprint. And if you look at what he used, the message is undeniable. He did not conjure wine out of thin air. He specifically hijacked the stone jars designated for the Jewish rites of purification. Water meant to ritualistically cleanse the outside of a person was transformed from the inside out. Into wine, the ancient biblical symbol of joy. Into covenant, and the arrival of the kingdom, 37 times. That is the number of specific, recorded miracles performed by Jesus of Nazareth across the 4 Gospels. He is quietly declaring that the old system of external, rule-based purification is over. The new wine has arrived. This first semeion establishes the baseline of the invasion. He has authority over the molecular structure of water. He can rewrite the physical elements of creation at a spoken word, without even breaking a sweat. But the sequence does not stay in the realm of chemistry for long, because the next phase of the invasion requires him to confront something that can actually fight back. He leaves the wedding in Cana. He walks into Capernaum. The timeline accelerates. It is the Sabbath. He is sitting in a synagogue. The room is quiet. The air thick with the smell of old parchment and burning oil. Suddenly, Amen stands up. His body is rigid. A voice that is not his own tears through the silence, echoing off the stone walls. "What do you want with us? Jesus of Nazareth, have you come to destroy us?" Jesus does not argue. He does not perform a long, elaborate ritual. He does not burn incense. He speaks a single command: be quiet and come out of him. The man falls violently to the stone floor. The spirit is gone. He leaves the synagogue. He walks into the house of Simon Peter. A woman is lying on a mat, burning with a severe fever. 37 distinct moments where the laws of physics, biology, and meteorology bend the knee to a carpenter from a backwater town. Her skin slick with sweat. He bends down. He touches her hand. The fever vanishes instantly. She stands up and begins to serve them. The sun drops below the horizon. The Sabbath ends, and the streets of Capernaum explode into absolute chaos. They bring the sick. They bring the possessed. They bring the crippled. The narrow dirt road outside the door is packed with desperate people. The air fills with the smell of rotting wounds, unwashed bodies, and the guttural, shrieking voices of unclean spirits. He heals them. He touches the blind. Sight returns. He commands the demons. They flee. He speaks to the paralyzed. They walk. This is the second phase of the invasion. He is moving from the molecular structure of water to the biological structure of human tissue and the invisible structure of the spiritual realm. And the rhythm of the chronology here is frantic, rapid, unyielding. These are not medical favors. They are a territorial eviction. Every fever that breaks is a boundary line being pushed back. Every demon cast out is a trespasser being forcibly removed from the property. He is not just repairing bodies. He is repossessing the house of creation, room by room, driving out the darkness that has held it hostage since Eden. He proves he has total jurisdiction over the flesh. He proves he has absolute command over the spirits. But as the days turn into weeks, most people read this list of events and assume they are just a random assortment of divine muscle flexes. A deeper pattern emerges in the timeline. He isn't just healing the people who politely wait in line in Capernaum. He isn't just dealing with the acceptable sick. He starts moving toward the people that polite society refuses to look at. And to understand what drives the invasion, you have to understand exactly what happens in his chest when a man with rotting skin falls in the dirt at his feet. Mark, chapter 1, verse 40. A man with leprosy falls on his knees in the dirt. He is completely isolated, considered ritually unclean, his body covered in white, flaking scales. He looks up at Jesus and says, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." Most English translations tell us what happens next with a very safe, sanitized phrase. They say Jesus was moved with compassion or filled with pity. But the word Mark uses in the original text is the Greek verb splagnizomai. It is a difficult word to pronounce. and an even harder word to translate into modern, polite English. Its root is the noun splagnon, which literally translates to the bowels, the intestines, the internal organs. In the ancient world, they did not believe that your deepest emotions lived in your heart. They believed your most profound, uncontrollable feelings, your deepest grief, your fiercest love lived in your gut. When Mark writes that Jesus was moved with splagnizomai, we picture Jesus wandering through the ancient Near East, bumping into sick people, feeling sorry for them, and using a little bit of heaven's magic. He is describing a physical twisting of the stomach, a visceral, cramping ache in the abdomen. He is not just feeling bad for the man. Compassion is not a polite, detached sympathy. It is a violent, a physical agony at the sight of what disease has done to the creation he loves. We see this same exact word used later in the Gospels when Jesus tells the story of the prodigal son. When the father sees his ruined, starving boy walking down the road from a distance, the father is filled with splagnizomai. It is the gut punch of a parent watching their child suffer. It bypasses logic. It demands immediate action. That root changes everything. It tells us that the chronological progression of these miracles is not a cold, calculated military campaign. The invasion is driven by a profound, agonizing love for the casualties. If realizing how much is hidden in the original Greek is completely changing how you read these stories, you're exactly who this channel is for. Subscribe and leave a comment below. Because every week, we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So Jesus reaches out his hand. He touched the untouchable man. He breaks the religious law to make physical contact with rotting skin. He speaks a word, and the scales vanish. The man's flesh is suddenly pink and new. The boundary line of the invasion has just been pushed even further into the dark to fix whatever emergency happened to be standing in front of him that day. We read them as isolated incidents. He has conquered the corrupted molecular structure of water, the invisible dominion of demons, and now, the incurable decay of human flesh. He has absolute authority over the body. But the invasion is about to hit a wall of water, because the next major sign does not happen in a synagogue. And it does not happen on a dusty street. It happens in the pitch black, in the middle of a lake. And it terrifies his own disciples far more than the storm itself. A wooden fishing boat plunges into a trough of black water. The Sea of Galilee sits in a basin surrounded by hills, notorious for violent, sudden squalls that drop out of the sky like a stone. But this is not a standard storm. The men in this boat are professional fishermen. They have lived their entire lives on this water, their skin weathered by these exact winds. And they are screaming. The wind is deafening. The waves are crashing over the bow, filling the hull with cold, heavy water. The timber is groaning, seconds away from splintering into the dark. They are bailing frantically, but the sea is swallowing them faster than they can fight. And in the stern, Jesus is asleep. His head is on a cushion. The boat is violently pitching back and forth. The freezing spray is hitting his face, and his breathing is completely steady. A healing here, a multiplication of bread there. But if you take a step back and actually lay them out in chronological order, they shake him awake. The panic in their voices cuts through the roar of the wind. "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He stands up in the soaking, pitching boat. He does not pray to God for deliverance. He does not perform a ritual. He looks into the pitch-black chaos of the storm and speaks directly to the elements as if they are a disobedient animal. "Peace, be still." The wind drops. The waves flatten into glass. The wood stops groaning. Instantly. The text says, "There was a great calm," a silence so sudden and absolute that it rings in their ears. The sea, in ancient Jewish literature, is not just a body of water. It is the abyss. It is the symbol of untamed chaos, the dwelling place of the demonic. The dark deep that existed before God spoke light into the void in Genesis chapter 1. The ancient mind feared the sea because the sea represented everything hostile to human flourishing. Jesus is not just performing a weather trick to keep his friends dry. He is standing over the ancient abyss and demanding its absolute submission. He is proving that the invasion is not just biological, and it is not just spiritual. It is cosmic. He holds the molecular code of the atmosphere in his throat, and the disciples in the boat realize exactly what they are looking at. Mark chapter 4, verse 41 says,